this podcast is made possible by the generosity of listeners like you. Kindly consider a contribution through Patreon or PayPal. Links are in the details box. Patreon is a monthly subscription that you can cancel anytime, and PayPal is a one-time donation. Any amount is appreciated. And follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, the handle, the Beirut Banyan. And you can find us on our YouTube channel with the same name, and you can start watching the episodes as they're released. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. I'm Ronnie Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan. I was taking a small break from the podcast. I took a week off to just sort of sit back and try to reflect on personal things, on public things, maybe just trying to digest a lot that's happened in the last few weeks. And you're the reason I broke my silence. And it's because I admire you. I admire your confidence. And this is sort of an episode without preparation. You shared a tweet. It resonated with me. You were public about your pain. And I think it takes some courage to do that. So you gave me the confidence to get off of my lazy ass and stop enjoying this little break of mine and get back to recording. So I was trying to time it.
Sorry about that.
Well, no, don't apologize. I was going to wait until after Labor Day in the US to just go back to the routine. But you know what? There's no need for that kind of time frame. I want to start by maybe just that tweet and what it meant, maybe what it meant to you and also what it meant to me. And I'll explain it from my side. You're scarred. And you're acknowledging that it's a relatively minor scar and that this is just a physical wound and you will be able to walk. You'll be fine. You're not damaged in that sense physically. But you are, in a sense too, marked for life with what happened on August 4th. And you're also expressing the mental cost of going through an experience like this. And there's an injury that's visible and not. And you're dealing with both. And that's my life. You know, I think I wake up every morning and there hasn't been a day in a long time that Lebanon is not on my mind. Not the good stuff, but the bad. And I'm not able to always articulate it with enough sort of boldness, and I think you did. And I'm happy you're alive. I communicated with you just a few tweets, I think it was a few weeks ago, just making sure that you were okay. You shared photos of your apartment in Mar Khair. We kind of joked before recording that your background is a thing of the past, and now we have a sterile hotel room as a background, but that's okay. That's okay.
Look, we got a little poster over there.
Got one poster.
That's the best I could do.
Was it Mazen Kirbaj? Is that right?
Yeah.
So we need to bring him back somehow. Maybe get the hotel to decorate his work all over the place. But it sounds silly, but I'm happy you're alive, and that's how low the standards are in Lebanon. I'm happy you're alive. I'm inspired that you're sharing a bit of your pain, and you're willing to talk about it on the podcast. And the moment is a bit bizarre, but the scarring and the permanent damage that resonates with me. Let's start with the most bleak sort of stuff, and maybe we can kind of find some optimism later, but let's dive into the pain. And I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, that before we started, you said that you're inclined to not go back to that apartment and not return. And if you don't mind me asking, what goes through your mind when you have to make that decision? And if you are deciding against going back, why are you deciding against it? And what does that decision mean to you? Just in terms of where it happened, you're surviving that moment, and now sort of at a distance a bit, choosing to maybe not return to that type of abnormality.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's been, I guess a month now, and it took me until 2 days ago to decide that I'm not moving back. I mean, I rent the place, so, I have the luxury of not having to move back. A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
Something changes in you when something like this happens. It's not, I don't remember what my apartment was like before the explosion anymore. The only memory I have, the most vivid one, is post-explosion. I go back there often because I still have my things there, and I went to clean up and things like that. I don't know if I moved back there, if things would just be fine and it would go back to normal. And that's the reason why I've decided not to move back there. Because what if things don't go back to normal?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I go back there now, it doesn't feel normal. There's still blood stains on the tile. I was telling you, my landlord wasn't able to clean them. It doesn't want to replace the tiles.
Yeah.
A lot of things that were fixtures of the apartment are now destroyed. So it's not the same place anymore. Outside, the neighborhood is not the same place anymore. You can't walk through that neighborhood without immediately just being transported to the 2 hours after the explosion.
Yeah.
And the thoughts running through your mind, why didn't I do this? What if I had done that? Why didn't I help this person? What if I did that? It's just an overload of thoughts and weight of a guilt that you feel everywhere you go. And even when you forget it for a moment, you feel guilty that you forgot, which is actually why I tweeted yesterday, because I felt like now I'm starting to have moments where, a few minutes go by where I forget what happened. That in and of itself is something very distressing because I don't want to forget, and I don't want other people to forget either. People who are injured less maybe have the luxury of being able to, get through it a little more easily. But when you have people close to you who lost somebody, whose close family member is, was in surgery for, 10 hours, you feel like you owe them not to forget what happened to them because they're going to be dealing with it for a lot longer directly than you're dealing with it. So, I don't know. It's a hard decision whether you move back or not because it's not like you move back and then you forget what happened. The street outside, the hospital near my house, all of my neighbors, that day is just going to be on repeat all the time, and you just are not ever going to be able to get over it. And, it's too bad that others are not able to leave, and I feel bad that I'm able to leave. So it's just, this is the after effects of something like this, is that you survived, you feel bad. You were not injured that badly, you feel bad. You helped one guy but not another guy, and the other guy died, you feel bad. There's no way that you can spin it in your mind to make you feel good about anything that happened or anything that you did, in that few hours after the explosion.
Yeah.
There's no kind of glimmer of hope that you can find or something that makes you think, wow, this was a positive thing that happened. No.
Yeah. I think it would be a challenge of the century to find a positive out of that kind of tragedy. And I'm curious, Mike, you mentioned that within 2 seconds of the second blast, the one that destroyed your apartment, that you made a decision that was almost instinctual, that you dived into a sort of a corner or almost like a shielded room, shielded enough that it was just going to be an injury rather than potential death. Can I ask you what do you know what made you jump? Did you sense that this is what saved your life potentially? Why did you make that decision right then. And I mean, it's. I don't want to sound cheesy here. It sounds like a miracle that you saved yourself from the blast. So, I mean, this may be difficult terrain, but what made you jump at that moment, just a split second before the blast tore your apartment?
Um, well, there was a roaring sound
Hmm.
that people heard. This is what people thought was a
Yes.
jet.
Right.
It was just the sound of the fire
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and a shaking. Like everybody else, I went up to my window because I thought it was right outside to see what it was. My apartment's very small. I mean, that room you see in the interviews I do, that's basically my whole apartment. And the
Oh.
wall,
Oh. I see. That is the. So
yeah,
it's
I
like
mean,
a
there's a
big.
bedroom.
Right. Right. Right.
There's
Yeah.
one bedroom, but it's
Yes.
basically just that. It's
Yeah.
very small. It's
Hmm.
like 60 square meters. I went up to my windows, um, and then for some reason, I just got a sinking feeling in my chest that something is not right here. Um, I walked back behind my kitchen island, and I just ducked over there. And then 1 second goes by, 2 seconds go by, and I'm feeling very silly. Like what are you doing ducking? And it's just there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now, go and duck behind something. You're like, okay, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Um, and then I started to get up, and then that's when the explosion happened. Um,
Oh, you
and
were.
I'm just,
Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Sorry.
yeah,
Sorry.
I think
Yeah.
that's why I mean, I caught a glass to my knee, and I think that's why, because I was coming to get up, and so my knee
Right.
moved forward past the kitchen island. Um, and then you're just ducking there, and you're just frozen, like midway, and you're just thinking, what the hell just happened? And you're just frozen there, and you don't know how much time goes by. You know, I from my vantage point, I couldn't see the windows, but I could see the other side of the room. So I'm looking up, and all I see is just tons of glass, like a tornado, just flowing, from
Yeah.
one side of the room to the other. The aluminum of the window frame came apart and flew across the room. My kitchen ceiling collapsed, and it's just a surreal moment because you have no idea what just happened, and you're like, is this real? What just happened? Um, anyway, and then
So
I
you're
stayed there
almost.
for
It's
a
almost
while.
like suspended in time in a sense. You're able to sort of see it happening right in front of you.
Yeah,
I mean,
when
yeah.
they say it happens in slow motion, it really is.
Yeah.
And then you kind of wake up when a few seconds later, or maybe you start hearing it a few seconds later, um, the jarring car alarms outside. You start hearing people screaming,
Yeah.
and it just becomes this one like combined sound of chaos that you're hearing from outside your window. Um, and then when I got up, basically, I mean, there was no wall there anymore because I had floor to ceiling windows, so there was just like a big hole in my apartment.
Oh wow.
And then there's just a lot of confusion in those moments because I mean, I had cuts on me, small cuts, but cuts on your face. Your face tends to bleed a lot, even if it's small cuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just feel warmth dripping down your face. You see it on the floor all around you. You don't know whether you've been severely injured or not because you know that you don't feel the injury right away. So the first thing you're thinking is, shit, I need to go and check that I'm not about to die right now. And it's the most terrifying feeling because you start thinking of anything else to do so you don't have to do that. I called my mom. I called my friends who I know are in town. We're in Beirut. And then finally it's that moment of truth where you're like, all right, I have to do it now. I have to stand in front of the mirror and examine my body to make sure there's not a piece of glass sticking out of my stomach right now that I don't see. And then, you do that and you're fine. Or, I was fine. And then, you got to figure out, okay, what do I do now? If you're not It's not something you really ever plan is going to happen to you.
Did you
And
see I mean, the what you shared on Twitter? Was that visible to you right away?
no, it wasn't.
No.
I didn't see it.
Yeah. So you
I
kind
didn't
of
see it because
yeah.
I had cut the power off to my apartment,
Mm,
so the bathroom was dark. So I just kind of looked at the, you know, areas that could actually kill you. You know,
right.
my
Right.
torso, my head, my
Yes.
neck. I mean, I've a long time ago, I used to be an EMT, a volunteer EMT. So, you know, we've done a lot of these drills like this.
Yeah.
So I just try to remember kind of what do I need to do now? Um,
So you're
I know
taking
I didn't do it right because I
yeah.
missed a huge gash in my leg, but you know,
That's
you don't plan for it to
did
happen to you.
did you
You plan for it
pass
to
the
happen to
class
others.
or no? I'm kidding.
No, I did well
You
actually. I
did
did
well.
well, but you
Okay.
know, seeing it, simulating it in a field is very different
Sure. Of
than
course.
you know. I mean,
And it's your own body. I
if it,
mean, it's if anything, you expect to feel it maybe right away, but it doesn't work that way. It yeah
no,
these
no,
yeah
I mean, and remember, in the moment, there's just so much happening around you
of
that
course yeah
you're just, you know, I mean, there was blood everywhere. Um, Turns out it was not from a serious wound, but you know, some places you get cut and you bleed a lot.
yeah
And when you see the damage in the apartment, you're like, there's no way I'm not seriously injured. You know, I mean, there was no wall left. I couldn't even, I mean, I cut my feet walking to the bathroom because it was just a carpet of glass everywhere, and I was barefoot. So you look at it, and I saw a huge puddle of blood, and you're like, okay, I know I'm wounded somewhere, and do I really want to discover where I'm wounded? Um, but in a way, you feel like you just go on autopilot,
yeah
where
yeah
you just, I just like, okay, just remember what the training was, and just do it. And you know, I mean, in a way, I'm actually proud of myself that I was able to, you know, cut power to my apartment. I closed my gas tank. I stayed ducking for a little while longer because I thought it was an airstrike.
right
I did inspect myself. I didn't have any, you know, I mean, I feel like I did that, at least that part, I did it right.
yeah
Um, and then, you know, when I was done doing that, you're getting your phone is just going off once. It's not enough to just, you know, on WhatsApp, I'm fine, call you later, whatever. People want to talk to you. And you're not able to talk in that moment, you know, and even though in a way you're obviously very happy that your family's calling you and they want to check up on you. But what I would tell people if, you know, something like this happens again to anybody they know, there's something that you're going through in a moment like that where you need to give that person what they need, at least in the immediate aftermath of what happened, and not what you need.
yeah
And sometimes people need to, you know, go out and help. They need to just not talk to anybody. Um, and just the blast of phone calls, which, you know, in retrospect is nice. You know, you feel very alone when something like this happens. I mean, I didn't realize I was sharing this with the entire city at the time. But in that moment, you're like, it's just, I need to figure out what I need to do right now
yeah
because it's still not safe where I am, you know?
I'm going to offer my own sort of moment that I mean I don't share this with anyone, but I'll share it with you. You're being very kind and telling me something that you're using specific words also that I mean if I had to look back and reflect on my own kind of personal stuff, I think I would use the exact same words. Um, I don't think I can ever live in the same apartment when I heard the explosion that killed my father, uh, and looking at the phone and realizing what happened and the autopilot of everything that happened in the aftermath, and then not caring about your own well-being, just making sure people you care about are okay, and sort of coming to terms that there's something wrong inside, feels horrible, and then it's sort of it's not something you can just sort of erase. And the sense of paralysis that you described, although yours is far more life-threatening to you, and you barely survived. I mean, you made a decision that saved your life. I mean, that's something I cannot relate to, and I mean, all I can say is that I'm glad you made that quick decision. But the paralysis, watching sort of things freeze in front of you, it's exactly how I felt. It's exactly how I felt, and
Did you
yeah,
hear it from the apartment?
yeah, I heard it, and I didn't know that it was. You said you thought it was an Israeli strike. I thought it was I thought it was maybe a construction site that collapsed. I didn't go there. I didn't go to what happened. And I know I don't want to. I mean, what you went through is so much more difficult and painful, at least when it comes to your own well-being. So I'm not. I don't want to make it sound like there's a similar story here at all, other than trauma.
No, it's very similar.
There's
It's
trauma.
very similar.
Yeah, this is trauma, and I think the fact that there's hundreds of thousands of people that witnessed what you witnessed and went through it. I mean, this is an unprecedented form of collective trauma. It's just it's. And when I started by kind of saying that I took the last few weeks off to try to process a few things, I think, call it selfish, but I think I'm feeling these things again.
Yeah.
I'm not in Beirut. All my attention is on Beirut, but I'm not there. The blasts shook me to my core, and it shook me in a way that was, I mean, on a personal side, it reminded me of the aftermath of my father's assassination, even though it's not the same. But it took me back. The very, very unimpressive finale of the tribunal, the verdict, it reminded me of things again that I thought I had maybe managed to compartmentalize. But no, it's every day. It's every day. Even on good days and bad days, it's every day. And then seeing so many people I know, whether in real life or in your case, virtually, we don't know each other in person, sharing that moment online. I mean, I felt connected suddenly to this collective pain.
The world really is divided between two sets of people to me now. People who know what trauma like this feels like.
Yeah.
People like you and others who have experienced something like that. People who were there on the ground and saw what everybody else saw. And people who just watched it on TV. And that's not to say that like they have their empathy is any less, but no matter how empathetic they are, no matter how much they care, if you weren't there, you don't know what it was like. You don't know what it was like to see bodies laying on the ground to such an extent that you just walk over them because it doesn't, your mind just shuts that off.
Yeah.
You see one body on the ground and you panic. You see 10 and you're just like stepping over them, moving them out of the way from the roads that the ambulance can pass. You don't know what it really feels like to see moms screaming for help and nobody answering them. People laying on the ground with fingers chopped off, arms chopped off, screaming for help, drenched in blood, and there's absolutely nobody there to help. The thing you hear the most after this, the last month, is Alhamdulillah Salam, Alhamdulillah Salam. Glad you're okay. Which is, it's what you have to say. It's not what else you're going to tell somebody.
That's true. Actually, you're right. There's nothing else you can say. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
But what that does, in a very perverse way, is it just takes you back to being out there. And, somebody like me who, has like basic wound management and bandaging skills. I keep a trauma kit at home from those days, and it was packed with gear. So I went down to the hospital. There's a hospital by my house over there, which was totally demolished, but it became like a makeshift trauma center.
Yeah.
But they had no equipment. They were basically just the nurses were using what I had in my kit.
Which hospital is this? Is it
Guardia?
What the? Oh, okay. So not yeah. So but so it was
It's not a trauma hospital.
right. Yeah.
They don't do this kind of thing. They're like cancer treatment and things like that.
Right.
And you have to start deciding which person do I want to help. Do I bandage this person up or do I bandage that person up? This person is unconscious. Do I go and see what's wrong with them, or do I just say, well, too late for them. I gotta go. And at the time, it's autopilot. You're not really fazed by anything you're seeing in that moment. It's only when you're looking back at it, you start questioning every single decision you made. Did I help the right person?
Yeah.
Did I waste too much time on this person while somebody else was right next to him and he needed help more? Did I let this person die so I could bandage up somebody who was going to be okay anyway? There's not a decision you make that you feel comfortable having made. And so when people tell you Alhamdulillah Salam, it just takes you back there and you're just like, fuck.
Yeah. And
I remember my well enough to know that this person was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's the other person that needed help more than him.
You're aware that this is absolutely beyond your control. That you did as much as exactly. It doesn't right 100%. That even if you are able to come to terms with it, that you did what you could at that moment, it still creeps up and it's haunting. Yeah.
Yeah, because people could tell you, obviously I didn't cause the explosion, none of us did. But, between you and yourself, you start thinking, what if I had done this thing different?
Mm-hmm.
What if I had done that other thing different? Maybe at least for somebody, the outcome could have been different.
Yeah.
But no matter what you did, you could have done everything perfectly. It's just a feeling that doesn't escape you because, because you should have been ready. Because, I've done so much training for this. I don't feel like I did everything the way I should have done it. I don't know. It sounds like, okay, well, what did you do? It's not, what's your role in this? But, it just doesn't matter how you rationalize it in your mind.
Yeah.
The fact is, people died around you, and there was a possibility maybe that you could have done something, and you didn't. And you have to think about that all the time. And it's just how it is now.
Mike, can I ask you about your division? And I divide the world accordingly as well. Nobody has ever said it the way you've said it to me, and that's exactly how I divide the world. By the way, this doesn't include just people that are strangers. This includes, I think, to a certain degree, friends and perhaps lovers.
Yeah.
It enters all. Thankfully, there's enough people to get you by. Otherwise, it would be a very small audience.
In Lebanon, especially.
Right. Exactly. But
fortunately.
But have you had to deal with that already? And I mean this in a sort of broad way. Do you get? Let's use the example of media. Do you get media requests from people that are perhaps unaware of how painful this is? And I'm not maybe deliberately excluding Lebanese media here, even though they could be at times sort of incorrect in their emotional sort of judgment. And I've experienced this myself. But is it there, or is it also among colleagues or maybe people that you know that you're not able to connect with?
It's really everywhere you look. In terms of media, I got a media request from a Canadian TV station the night of the blast, basically asking me, can you come on to talk about the explosion?
Oh,
When I got
the
that
same night.
the same night, yeah. And it's funny, when I got that message, so I discovered the wound in my leg
Yeah,
much later that night.
yeah,
I was too tired to go to a hospital. The hospitals were just, they were dealing with so much more. So I was like, I'm going to wait until tomorrow. But my friend, who's a doctor, told me that you have to get it stitched right away. Um, because once it starts healing, it might not be possible to stitch it up anymore.
right.
And you just
Yeah,
have to wait months for it to heal on its own and heal poorly, and you have to clean it every day. And it was a thing.
yeah, yeah.
And he's like, well, what you can do is just stuff it, pack it with gauze so that it doesn't start healing.
Oh,
And
oh,
if you
right.
ask me to do that now, no way.
I mean,
But you're still in that autopilot mode.
yeah, right.
I was in the bathroom shoving gauze inside my wound, and my phone beeps, and I look at it, and it's a reporter asking me to do an interview, and I'm just like, this motherfucker. So I don't do
It's
interviews
almost
with
like a
people anymore.
movie scene. I mean, it can't like nobody. I mean, I know
No, they
what.
just
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't. Yeah,
complete detachment. This
sure.
is the split between
Yes,
you were
yes.
there or you weren't there.
Yeah.
In Lebanon, I mean, I went back home, and I remember this was just last week. A family member, or I won't say who in case they watch this, but they'll know who they are, comes up to me and starts taking photographs of my injury while I'm just sitting there in the living room. And this like rage built up in me for some reason. Now I look back, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I choked up on rage. Like, what are you doing? This is not like some. I'm not like wearing new clothes that you want to, take a photo of.
Right.
You become very irritated at everybody, and you have to control that because it's not their fault that they don't know. But you become irritated at every single person because you're like, you have no idea. You have no idea.
Yeah.
My mom asked me the other day, do you have any fun plans this weekend? I'm like, fun plans? Everything just starts pissing you off, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's one of, I don't know if you felt something similar, but
I mean,
you just end up being like a very antisocial person.
yeah, that's another word you used earlier. It's also exact. I mean, I I remember being surrounded by media the day, and the hours after, and cameras and flashing, and there were microphones everywhere, and also trying to sort of just find my way out. But it's the autopilot, and also sort of okay, maybe she might watch this, so it's fine. Paula
It's okay.
Yaubi.
If you want to watch it.
Oh no, no, no.
Yeah,
Paula Yaubian. I don't know. She might see this. With all respect to her media career, and I told her this the evening of the assassination. Future TV back then, they showed up. They wanted to do an interview with myself and my mom. This is the same day, so this is. I mean, I was not in my right mind whatsoever, and I had gone from hospital to hospital because I wanted to see what happened. So I made the decision to go see what was left of my father. And I also made the decision to pay my condolences to his driver, who was killed in the blast. I was unable to meet the victims of the blast. There were others that were either killed or injured, and I wasn't able to do that. I ran into a few later, but this is later, maybe a day or two later. But it's a bit hazy. But going back to the media stuff, she shows up, and I mean, it's Paula Yaubian. So she does this for a living, or she did this for a living. So I know that maybe I should expect very little sort of comfort from that moment. This is a media personality. But I told her so. I told her before she started the interview. I told her that what you're after right now means nothing to me. And it was born. It came out of a bad place. I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think she needed to hear that. But she agreed. She agreed. And she said, this is how media functions. I mean, it's nothing. It's not personal. And I showed up on that interview. My mom would have been alone, actually, sitting on the sofa talking to her. I kind of at the last second, I walked into the camera scene and I sat down, and I sort of I shared what I could, but it was a very painful exchange because I couldn't really put my mind around what was happening. I couldn't understand really. And this is going to be maybe I have never really shared these things before.
Yeah.
Because it's future TV and because of the moment, suddenly Najib Miati walks into our apartment and sits down. I did not want to talk to him. I didn't want him to sort of offer some mediocre ideas or even maybe perhaps falsehoods. The usual of we will get those guys and we'll catch them and blah blah blah. I wasn't really having it.
There's some political points.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he had just flown in, maybe to the country or something. He had just sort of arrived. But it's for media. It's not for us. Right? So there's a great scene, and I'm sure it's somewhere on YouTube, of me just sort of looking at the floor and Najib Miati trying to give his sort of prophet-like predictions. And it's the usual blah blah. I mean, it's sort of saying, yes, we'll catch these guys, we'll have an investigation. And you know, by the way, you know at that moment that this is all BS. You know it.
From all of them.
Yeah.
And everybody else.
Sure. But like,
they tell you.
Yeah, and it's hours after the incident. So I'm trying, you're like built up rage against a photo of your wound. It's like exposing you unnecessarily. You're not trying to expose. It's a vulnerable thing. It's a very vulnerable position to be in, and I think you sort of automatically you want to preserve yourself. And yeah, I mean that rage. I think it lingers on and on and on and on and on, and it doesn't really.
Yeah.
You just sort of.
I mean,
you put it on the shelf at some point, but it's still on the shelf, and it
Yeah, it makes an appearance. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had said that this trauma is greater because it's more, I mean, because it happened to me. But, I don't believe that. You lost somebody you love.
Yeah, I keep him above every episode as well, and I sort of light a candle beneath him every day. And we had a very nice moment last time. I'm going to mention it. You didn't know, and I liked that.
I didn't.
Yeah, we had a conversation.
I don't really know people.
Yeah, no, we had a conversation.
I just don't really know people.
Yeah, but it was nice because it was a pure conversation without any sort of. There was no background. It's just two people wanting to talk about finance. but yeah, no, I mean, sorry, I interrupted you. I'll let you keep going.
I don't know how you did that interview. I mean, and the day of, Yeah. I mean, it was hard reading because a lot of people wrote kind of personal essays in the days after the explosion about what happened. I don't know how they wrote those so fast. How they were able to focus to write something, but they were very comforting. Because sometimes it's hard to process the feelings that you need to be feeling on your own, and reading them on paper in well-written essay helps you kind of understand how you're feeling and how you need to be feeling through somebody else. But it was hard for me to even just get through the essays in one shot. And this was like in the 1, 2, 3 days after.
Yeah. So
I can't imagine sitting and doing an interview. And just at the time, you feel like this is stupid. Everything is stupid.
That's what you said earlier. It's autopilot. You just, I don't even remember it. Honestly, I don't remember. I know it now by watching it. I don't really remember much about it. I know it happened, and at the same time, I think it's just your brain sort of hijacks the body maybe and just lets you pull through until you collapse days later.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
How did you deal with feeling that everybody around you was starting to forget and was going to forget and you were going to be the only one left and who remembered what happened?
That's a very good question. And no one has ever asked me that question. Kim Rattes, she used to work for BBC. In early 2014, she was doing a radio, BBC Radio 4, I believe, or it was a, she was out, she wanted to talk to me. And I kind of alluded to what you just asked. I said, the adjustment to abnormality is, in my opinion, Lebanon's curse. And I can't get upset at people dancing at white above Nahar, the evening that my father was killed 2 blocks down in Starko. Oh, I can't. It's not fair for me to blame them on anything. They did nothing wrong. They're enjoying their night out. Yet, the fact that they're able to enjoy their night out while this kind of absurdity is happening, and it's not just my father who was killed in that explosion. Others were killed too. So it's assassination almost robs, I think, the other victims from the story. There are people that die in every single attack, and they have nothing to do with what's going on. I think it's a very lonely feeling that you start seeing things in 2020 vision, and there's no pun intended with the year right now, but it's too clear, and you start realizing that that's just the way it works. People adjust, and they accept a certain level of paralysis, of pain, and
Here, only here, because
that's my. I mean, fortunately maybe I don't know what it's like to be in other countries dealing with maybe collective pain, but in the Lebanese context, I think it's quite stunning.
yeah,
I think it's quite stunning that you can have an assassination and people don't. It's not that they don't care. They're like, oh, another assassination. And Starco, within a few days, is repairing their windows, and that's that. It's over. That person was killed. No justice. No. It's almost like the crime didn't happen. It's
yeah,
almost like nothing happened. And I think that I internalized that as that is what Lebanon's curse really is that it's been so long, so many years, so much time of that routine that people sort of they move on too fast.
yeah,
And it's a lonely feeling because you only get to talk to people who have experienced a certain level of loss or pain in that sense, and they don't really want to talk about it all the time. I mean, it's not an uplifting conversation. So yeah, it's lonely. It's very lonely.
yeah.
I don't know
I
if
mean,
that
there are
really,
rituals.
yeah, I don't know if that
No,
really answered the question, but it's I used
it
the
does. I mean,
phrase
it answered it
I
not
used
positively.
I used the phrase with her dancing into the abyss, and she used that actually as the story, the title for the story. That's how I felt, that these people are dancing, fine, good for them, but they're in free fall. And that's the way I kind of I understood it back then.
Yeah. There are rituals that happen in other countries, and they have a purpose. This idea of like a collective national mourning,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
leaders going down and showing some type of solidarity with people and giving uplifting speeches, and a real effort to bring justice to people who experience that. These things are so important for people to be able to move on in some way
yeah,
from what they experienced. And we are missing every single limb of that here,
absolutely.
where you're going to get no justice. People are going to be forgotten. Everybody who died is going to be forgotten, but their families are not going to forget. They're going to remember every day.
Yeah.
And one day I'm going to forget, you know? it's just what's going to happen.
But I don't think you're going to forget. I might disagree with you forgetting what happened, and I'll only, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. I think it's, even if this is a missed opportunity, it may well be a missed opportunity, but hundreds of thousands of people had some form of had something that is similar to a degree of what you experienced, and that you're not alone. And you, I mean, people not just in Madam Khair wa Jamaizi wa Ashrafiya, I mean, there are just too many people that had either an injury, or they lost a loved one, or they lost their homes, and they all saw the same things that you're describing right now. A president who cannot say one thing that heals, not one thing, not one thing. You know what? I'll say it a little differently. I am disappointed that this kind of collective pain did not transition into a collective justice. Because I thought maybe with enough people hurting, you could see the things that you'd want to see. And that includes maybe a leader, whether it's the president or anyone afraid of the public's reaction and stepping down out of fear, or maybe being whisked aside by their aides and saying they're coming for you. Go. I am disappointed that I expected maybe some of that to happen and it didn't happen. And but the people that are hurting, it's very distressing. But the people that are hurting, I don't think this is something. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you can easily forget this magnitude of trauma.
It's in a way you want to, because one side of you thinks, I don't want to live feeling this way the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live being irritated at everybody.
Yeah.
Feeling like everything around me is stupid and pointless. Feeling guilty about what I did and didn't do.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I'm terrified about forgetting. I'm afraid I'm going to forget what happened, and so I don't know where I want to be. And I guess you just kind of settle into whatever your body, wherever your mind settles into. You may not have too much control over it. But forgetting would be,
I'll only say something here,
would suck.
And I don't want to speak on your behalf. I'm just going to get what I sense from your work and your commitment. I think purpose and this level of passion, I think, will guide those emotions forward. And I have a feeling that even if you forget just enough to get by, that you need to do at some point, and you will, and everyone sort of finds a way to cope. The mission, I think, persists, and it just grows stronger. And I don't think you will forget enough to sort of let go of what brought you here. I doubt it. I would be surprised. You find a way to channel all the rage within you into something positive. In my case, it's very, very selfish. It's keeping a man that I admire deeply, keeping his words, keeping his voice alive. And in that pursuit, more selfishly, thinking what I think is best for a stable, secure, sovereign Lebanon. I think you'll find also within you that this tragedy that hit you very hard, it'll give you strength down the road. And I say this from my own experience. I think it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. But then you get there, and you feel like you're, in a way, a superhero, in a way. That you're unstoppable. So, not to sound too cheesy here, Hollywood-esque, but I don't think your passion or your pursuits will be fading anytime soon. I think they'll be growing. And yeah, that's somebody who admire somebody. This is from somebody who doesn't know you, somebody who only knows you on TV, social media, somebody who's a bit inspired by what you do. So I'll leave it there. I think I think your contribution is far from over. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think the near future is horrible, and I want to. So maybe we can wrap it up by both of us. We're I think roughly the same age. You're in your late 30s, or your
No, mid-30s.
mid 30s. Okay,
34.
34. I'm a little older, but we're the same.
Yeah,
We're,
same age. Yeah.
we're born in the
Let's call it
80s.
same age.
We're within arm's reach of Macron. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little younger than us, maybe.
Well, maybe, or
Well, he
maybe a
looks
little
younger than
older.
us.
He looks younger. He is younger, I think, at heart, but he is a bit older. I think he's
Well,
42.
he uses good cream.
Yeah, exactly. He uses great cream. Exactly. Or no, the cure is just fall in love with somebody a little too old for you, and maybe you'll stay young forever. The photo with Feiruz
Yeah.
was actually quite. I mean, it was in my opinion, it was a very sweet photo. It was nice to see Feiruz.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, it
she
was.
sort of faded a bit.
I haven't seen her in a while. Yeah.
Yeah. It was also equally interesting to sort of enter her living room and see how she lives. But let's talk about this. We're young. We don't have perspective when it comes to the worst years of tragedy. We were too young to really appreciate how bad it got during the Civil War. I have some memory of it. I remember a car bombing. I remember a dead body on the street in Tripoli. I remember glass. I remember pain, but childhood, limited, and I think most Lebanese at some point in their lives have gone through some form of that by default. But we're too young also to have seen the better years. We don't know what it was like prior to the Civil War. We only have stories. We have no clue what it would have been like to grow up in Beirut in the 1920s with the French Mandate and Greater Lebanon. But from our side, people that have post-war memories, people that have experienced the post-war years, I am unable at this point right now to see any direct improvement or any short-term improvement, but I do think that we're entering a massive transition along the lines of 1920. And I was thinking today, just before asking if you'd want to talk, of what it would have been like to come out of World War I in Beirut, from starvation, from famine, from war, from brutal sort of ending of the Ottoman Empire and hangings in Martyrs Square, and suddenly you find yourself under occupation. And the French militarily arrive. They're not sort of ushered in by some peace conference. This is a war. And in a sense, they bombed their way into mandate control. I think this would have been a terrifying moment to be in Lebanon. And you have the Spanish flu. You have so many people that died in the years before. And I think it would have been equally dismal back then to be entering Greater Lebanon. Whatever that meant to anyone in Beirut back then. It's like this odd sort of flag with a cedar tree in the middle. The French flag is cedar tree. And suddenly you have to, Gouraud becomes a household name. And I mean, things that were very alien. But things changed dramatically and permanently. And I get the feeling that this is happening now, that we're going through a very seismic shift. But it's just that history takes time. And we're living in an era where we have instant access to information, and we're able to collectively share things all the time. And maybe we expect more to happen sooner rather than later. But I do think that we're entering another chapter. Or maybe we're closing a certain book and opening something new, but there's something happening. And I think it's too early to see the shift.
A new chapter?
I think so, yeah. And I say this knowing that you shouldn't guess, you should never project into the future. But it has the feeling of a lot of things have changed recently, and they're still changing. And we're heading in a new direction. But does any of that resonate with you? That sort of that there is change, regardless if the change is good or bad in the near future. It may get worse. It may well collapse, but there is something in the air, and it's in a way it's unstoppable. There's no going back to 2016, 15, or even the 2000. You're never going to return to the 1990s. There's something else happening now, and it is
Yeah,
a permanent change.
no, no doubt. I mean, it's hard not to see that, and just seeing kind of all the things happening around you.
Mm.
The question then is kind of what direction are you going? Are you going to something much worse than you have now? Or is there an opportunity now to build something that will be better than what we've had the last few decades? For, may even be too late for us. Because, like you said, history takes time, nation building takes time. Um, as far as my reading, this country can go in two totally opposite directions. And it just depends on what decisions are made. Um, but the world around us, I mean, excluding maybe the last few years, just looking kind of globally, the world around us is getting better. We're moving in
Yeah.
people are coming out of poverty. There is more access to information. The idea of, individual freedom and democracy and blah, 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 these things are becoming, it's a current.
Yeah.
If you look 50 years till now, there's clearly a trend globally. I think we could be picked up in that wave because we're not going to be the only country that's left behind. And as people here see that your life doesn't have to be this way, there's an alternative way of living that
Yeah.
everybody else is striving for, and you don't have to stay living this way. And I think that's what gives me hope that there is, if you look at it on a macro level, there is that possibility of getting there. But I just don't see it being an easy journey. And, I need that to be the case because selfishly also, I don't want to feel like I spent years of my life stressing, staying up late, just being as active as I'm able to be, and then find 5 or 10 years down the line that absolutely nothing happened, except that I wasted 5 or 10 years of my life on this. I need it to change, and I think a lot of us need it to change. And I think it can, but it's such a confusing time right now that we just don't know. We don't know where anything's going.
It's a confusing time. It's also symbolic time. I mean, the French army is celebrating our centennial for us. They're the ones flying the jets and sort of decorating the sky with the Lebanese flag, and I think terrifying some people as well into assuming these are war times.
Yeah,
maybe timing is a bit off, but it's the French army doing it, not us. Maybe something symbolic as well. Lady Cochrane Surso dies on the eve of the centennial. I mean, this woman's 98, turning 99. I mean, she is modern history. She is the modern Lebanon story. And she passes away indirectly from the explosions that took place. But, I mean, she's the sort of, you associate architecture and heritage and what's left of the charm of Beirut with that kind of story. And the Surso Palace itself is sort of destroyed in the process. The architecture that we celebrated, what was left of it, Jamaisi and Marim Khair, where you were living, I mean, a lot of that you can't fix it. I mean, a lot of it is just permanently damaged. And a lot of that damage we did to Beirut too. It's not just the blasts. We lost a lot of our heritage. Maybe the comfort zone that we got used to, that we could wither certain storms and Lebanon would come out okay, I think that's gone as well. And it'll take years and years and years before anyone really trusts the banking sector once again. And maybe even free expression, we're losing a bit of that on the way. Things that we really were proud of, we're unable to properly celebrate right now. So I think good stuff is ending, and maybe bad stuff is ending too. Maybe we're not going to adjust or readjust to permanent abnormality. Maybe certain individuals, their days are numbered. Maybe certain groups that we were too afraid to challenge directly, we're able to challenge directly today. And we know that there's a cost to everything, and there's a lot of decent people still trying, and I I think that's where the hope is. And I agree with you. I agree that you need to have that level of cautious optimism so that you don't feel like you wasted a decade of your life. But then you get sort of individuals like you and other people that we know trying against the odds, and they're still trying, and they're injured on the way, and they're still trying. And who knows? Who knows? I think 2020 is a difficult year for a lot of people. It's a very difficult year for Lebanon, and I hope it's replaced with something a little easier on us. And I hope if we're entering something new long term, it's for the better and not for the worse.
Yeah, we're not the first generation to go through a transformation like this and feel like you have a role to play in it. And they did it, and you have to keep doing it too. At least to know that you did, that you tried, and wherever things go, you did. You played your part in it, and you did what you could.
And you're very kind to share a bit of your personal story, and I know people are saying it all the time. So, alhamdulillah, salam. And Mike, we'll catch up when maybe if there's I don't know if it's funny when the financial story is put on the side for Macron and Fayrouz, and but I think that story is still front and center, and it'll hit hard very soon. So we'll catch up and we'll talk more about those things. But really, I thank you for giving me your time this evening. It means a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, Ronnie. Catch you later.
Thanks for listening, and a friendly reminder to help support this podcast by contributing through Patreon or PayPal. All links are in the details box below. Until next time, I'm Ronnie Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan.